John Wirtz, Montgomery County Tea Party, and we are here with Mr. Jackie Chance, and he is running for Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, Position 6, and that's Common Road. It's Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. With me is Dale Fessenden, Dennis Tibbs, and Pat Tibbs. And so, Jackie, as we discussed, why don't you kick it off with your 5-minute open?
Okay. Well, I'll begin with the fact that I've been in the water business all my life, basically. My dad was a water operator in Texas. From the age of about 6 years old, he started training me to do the same thing. And so I've been involved with water treatment from both the wastewater side and the water side all my life. I've taken courses in water law and surface water management, groundwater management, the whole works. I've spent the majority of my career working for Montgomery County WCNID #1. In the period of time I've worked for them, I started in 1978, January of 78. We had one Chico well and one Evangeline well. The Evangeline well, the water depth was about 75 to 100 feet, and we used a 75 horsepower motor. The Chico well was a 500 gallon a minute well, which was at probably the Oxford about 500 foot there. The Evangeline was 1,100 foot deep. By the early 1980s, the Chico was no longer available for water. We just overproduced it, and it wasn't viable, so we plugged that well off. We have lowered the Evangeline well to the point to where we're probably at a static level, which is the pressure, artesian pressure on the aquifer of close to 400 foot below the surface now. We're using a 250 horsepower motor to produce water, and we just lowered the well 100 feet. We've probably got another 60 we can go without going internally into the casing. When you do that, you damage not only your screens, but the aquifer itself, because you cause a washing effect because of the amount of water you're trying to remove. So we'll also have to reduce capacity on the well. We've also installed another Evangeline well and 2 Jasper wells since then, and we've seen water declines in all of them. I was instrumental in getting the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District up and going. All the operators in the county at the time were pretty much on board because we were all facing the same things. Lowering pumps at a rapid rate, damage to equipment, and supplying water to our customers. I believe it is imperative that we protect this aquifer and that we manage it properly so that we don't damage it. If we overproduce the aquifer, we can cause salt water to be pulled in from the Gulf. Then you have treatment that you have to put on that aquifer, or water you remove from the aquifer after you pull it out, which is going to drive the cost of the water up, plus it will slow the amount of water you can get, because once you pull it out, you got to run it through treatment before you can send it out. There's a lot of different ideas about water in this county, and the main reason I ran was I know that we have a problem if we don't manage it right, and some of the other people that have recently gotten on the Lone Star's board see it more as a money grab by the San Jacinto River Authority, and I don't see that at all. I think the San Jacinto River Authority seen a humanitarian interest and stepped up because they were the most logical person to build a water plant. They had a third of the lake water, they had a location on the lake to set a plant, and it just made sense. I don't think they really wanted to be in the water business, but they stepped up. I also sat on the SJRA's GRP review committee. We go over their books tight. We watch the finances. We make suggestions, and they've listened to the review committee all along. So there's a lot of misinformation out there in the news about what's going on, and I worry about this county having a long-term water supply and the viability of it. We've got a jewel there that we have to protect and we have to take care of. If we manage it right, it can last this county forever. If we manage it wrong, we're gonna have to look for places to impound water. That's very expensive, and it's also hard to find the money to buy enough land to impound water. Plus, there's just not that many places in Montgomery County you can impound water. We did manage to get an interconnect with Lake Conroe from the Trinity River. At least we've got reserved water. We don't have an interconnect yet. We need to run a pipe. But we have the water reserves set aside that we pay for every year so that we can recharge Lake Conroe when it gets to the situation where we will have to. And I see it sometime in the future, we're going to be pulling water out of the Trinity River and treating it in Conroe. But I guess I'll let y'all start with your questions. I don't know how close that was to 5 minutes, but I don't want to bore you.
Well, you heard it.
Yeah.
So how much of the reservoirs and, well, aquifers, sorry, I come from an oil and gas background, how much of the aquifers, first of all, what are the aquifers that consist of the Gulf Coast aquifer?
We have the
That's
Chico,
Yes,
the Evangeline, the Upper Jasper, the Lower Jasper, and the Catahoula.
Okay, and how much have, let's say, the three, excluding the Catahoula, have been depleted? How much of those, in other words, percentage, is left from when you think we started pumping from them?
Okay, well, the Evangeline aquifer at our #1 water plant, our well is 1,187 foot deep. The static level now is somewhere between 400 and 500 feet. I've got well tests set up for this coming month to figure out exactly where we stand. We haven't done this year yet, so I don't know exactly. Up until the Lone Star come on board, we were losing about 20 foot of water a year. We're now down to about 5 foot of water a year since they implemented the 30% reduction and switched over to surface water, so it has helped some.
How are you measuring that? Are you doing
With static levels.
static levels?
Mhm.
And how long do you allow for recharge in that?
For recharge,
Yeah.
I try and leave the well
Basically.
off overnight. So basically it'll be off anywhere from 12 to 16 hours, whatever I can effectively do. Since I've got 2 water plants, I can generally shut one of them down for 24 hours. I try and get the longest static, or longest recharge time I can, where I'm getting accurate static levels. And I do the same thing when the USGS comes out to test them, because they coordinate with me and tell me when they're gonna come, and we try and shut the wells off long enough that they can get good, accurate tests.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, you're obviously very much in the business of providing water. Explain to me how your position on this board would not be really a conflict of interest.
Well, if you provide water, then it's in your interest to maintain water to provide. I mean, it would be a conflict of interest if you weren't providing water, in my opinion, because you've got to have a source to provide water. And if you don't protect your source, you're out of business. And if we run out of water, we're all out of business, because if you bought a bottle of water lately, it's a whole lot higher than buying 1,000 gallons of water from your water district. I mean, you get 1,000, even at today's rate, which is roughly $6 a thousand, counting the charges that the SJRA puts on, and the direct cost to produce one of our wells is about $2.85 a thousand. So you're looking at about $6 for 1,000 gallons, compared to, if you have to go to a treatment method, you would be looking at just about the same thing at that well. You'd be looking at about the same price if you were treating the water probably right now. But you wouldn't be able to treat as much as you can get right now treating surface water, because you produce less to start with, because as you overpump these aquifers, you deplete the sands, you collapse them, you cause subsidence, and you also reduce permeability, which means the water flows to you slower.
Okay, Dennis?
So what is WCID?
Water Control and Improvement District. We manage parks, wastewater plants, water plants, and recreational facilities in Timber Lakes, Timber Ridge.
Okay, and you have 2 wells there?
I have 2 Jasper wells and 2 Evangeline wells. And we shut down the Chico well in the early 80s.
I got you. And physically, how far apart are those wells?
A little over a mile.
Yeah, okay.
Well, 1 Jasper and 1 Evangeline is at each plant, but the 2 plants are about a mile apart. The wells themselves are about 500 feet apart, but they're in different aquifers.
Okay. And you treat wastewater?
Yes, we also treat wastewater. We got a 950,000 gallon day wastewater treatment plant.
And you re-inject that?
Hmm?
You re-inject that wastewater?
No, we do not.
What do you do with it?
It's discharged into Spring Creek and it flows down to Lake Houston and they treat it and turn it into drinking water.
Oh, okay. All right, good deal, thanks. We're upstream.
Don't drink the water.
Okay, so I'm still trying to get my arms around the question they asked earlier and some of the numbers that you gave me as far as the static level readings. Is that typically enough time to allow so that you can make to recharge, you know, whether it's 1 or 2 days, to get an accurate reading
Yes.
on that, and you're not getting a cone of depression reading?
Yes, we should have a complete recharge in somewhere in the area of 8 to 12 hours. Because now, as far as cone of depression goes, because we're in the woodlands, I guess you call it ETJ, all the cone of depressions from most of these wells overlap. So the only way you get a true reading would be to shut every well off and probably this part of the woodlands for 12, 14 hours to see exactly where the water table went to. And that's just not feasible or possible.
Because that would be the more accurate reading, right?
In an ideal world, if you could shut them all off and give it 2 or 3 days to slow, so you could assure yourself that you had reached complete recharge, that would be the best way. But I would guess, just with my experience, over that 3-day period, you might gain 3 to 4 inches. That would be all.
Wow, okay. What kind of porosities and do we have around the different reservoirs here between Chico, which you said has been shut off, and Evangeline and the Jasper? What kind of porosities are we doing?
Our Evangeline wells produce about 11 gallons per foot of drawdown. Our Jasper wells produce about 15 gallons per foot of drawdown. The porosity of the sands themselves is, well, it varies depending on where you hit the aquifer at and what kind of soil you're in. So it's not really there's not really any number that I know that you could put on porosity as far as the permeability. I don't know.
Okay. All right. I would think somewhere around 30%, 35 maybe.
I've never heard a number. I mean, I've got an A in water. I've got a lot of hours in this, and I've never heard anybody attach a number to what the actual permeability of the sands are.
Okay, you made earlier reference to the USGS, and I may have missed part of the discussion there. Hopefully this isn't redundant. How often do you deal with the USGS? How often do they come out to test? When was the last time they were out?
they test our wells yearly on a normal basis. They tested well 4 last week, and they have not scheduled a test for the other ones. They're in the process of changing over their methods. They're going to testing them with an airline rather than a tape, and they want us to reconfigure some of our wells because we've got airlines that attach to them that keep them pressurized, and they want those taken off and blocked to where that they're getting a test without adding any air. I can pull up on my SCADA system right now what the level is of the well on my telephone.
Okay. As you are well aware, there are many differences of opinions on the adequacy and the restrictions and so forth. Are all of the well producers sharing the opinions that you are, or is there even differences of opinion amongst the producers?
There are differences of opinion between Conroe and us, between Quadvest and us. Some of us are conservative by nature. I'm conservative by nature. I want to be sure that I leave something for my kids and grandkids. And to do that, you have to manage it by what you know the recharge is. Lone Star has done several studies. They determined there's 64,000 acre feet a year of recharge. If you don't use more than that 64,000 acre feet, you're not going to damage that well. So that's where my theory comes from. There's more water down there, but you can damage it if you pump the blower.
Okay. Dennis?
Okay, just to double check what you said, 20 feet a year was your drop before Lone Star came in?
20 to 25 foot a year, yes.
And since then, it's been like 6 feet?
5 to 6 feet, yes. Since they implemented the water restrictions,
Okay, and when was it?
about 3 years ago.
Okay, so even at 64 pumpage limitation, we're still losing 6 foot? a
Well,
year?
we're still pumping over 64,000 acre feet a year
Okay,
because we could only overconvert a few areas. We have not really reached a point to where we've been able to stop at the 64,000 acre feet a year. There's a lot of areas in the county we can't get surface water to right now.
yeah. Well, initially, I think they were gonna implement that restriction like 10 years ago, and then they gave us a couple extra years, and another couple extra years, and another couple extra years. So those people that are exceeding their limitations, what's happening to them? Anything? Getting cited?
Right now, they're taking them to court in some instances, but I haven't really seen any real teeth applied to the regulation as yet. So I'd say right now they're trying to diplomatically get them to comply.
Okay. So, you mentioned the other folks running are believing that we can go right now almost immediately to 100,000 without a problem.
Not all of them, but some of them, yes.
Well, and that's what the Lone Star has applied for, right? I mean, currently, the one that's out for approval is 64, but they've already, as I understand it, given GMA 14 their 100,000 acre feet number to be.
I haven't seen the most, I don't even know that they've voted on it yet, but I haven't seen their most recent data.
Okay. So do you think if we do start pumping 100,000, you're going to see rapid declines?
Yeah, we'll see greater declines than we have had. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I mean, if you're losing 6 feet a year at 64,000 acre feet, you have another, what, 42,000 or 48?
36 or something like that, yeah.
36, yeah, whatever. I mean, you're gonna see a drop in water level that coincides with it.
So most of the candidates running are really on that other side. Have you met with any of those people and y'all exchanged comments about what's the best way to go?
I discussed briefly with John out here, but no, I haven't met with a lot of them. I know Rick Moffett, I've discussed it with him. Jim Stinson was on the board, I've discussed it with him. I've discussed it with Scott Wassinger. I know Scott and I have a difference of opinion, and Webb and I have a difference of opinion on how much can be produced. But, you know.
Scott, he's a PG, isn't
Hmm?
he? Is he a PG?
Who?
Scott Weisinger?
Scott?
He's a geologist.
I don't think so. He operates a well drilling service here in Conroe, Wassinger Water Wells.
Oh, okay, okay.
Which is a family business, huh?
Yeah, it's a family business.
So back to kind of Dill's question, and you said the Lone Star Groundwater District came up with these limitations, 64,000 acre feet. Where did they get that number from?
From studies they've done on the recharge rate of the aquifer.
Oh, and that they did, or did somebody else do it?
They committed funds to have the studies done by engineering firms.
Okay. Okay, because
I think LB Guyton, I want to say Guyton did one of the studies. LBG Guyton.
Let's see, I have, goodness, I don't know that I have it here, who did the study. I'll find it in a minute. So how much water do we have in the ground, in those aquifers under Montgomery County, and how much is recoverable for drinking water?
Total availability right now? I don't have that number committed to memory, but I think it's over, I want to say it's over 500,000 acre feet. I don't remember though right offhand.
Okay.
One of the things that goes with my hair color is my memory.
So is 180 million acre feet of water, does that sound kind of familiar? Because that's some numbers that's according to TERS report, as the 2014, the Gulf Coast Aquifer System has a maximum storage capacity of 180 million.
That's possible, yes.
Okay. And do you know how much of that can be safely yielded to extraction without permanent damage, percent-wise?
No, not really, because we've already damaged it to some extent from production, because we have over a foot of subsidence in this area right now.
In Montgomery County?
In Montgomery County over the last, I think, 40 years, 20, either 20 or 40 years, we've had over a foot of subsidence. That's a collapse of the aquifer itself, the clay's in the aquifer, so when that happens, you're also restricting permeability. My chief concern is that we pump it down, the pressure down too low, and that we get water reverse flow from the Gulf of Mexico recharging the aquifer, and that would permanently damage it, because once you get that salt water in there, then you've got the salt forever.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, of the 9 current board members on the Lone Star GCD, not many of them are running for re-election. Yet those are the ones that would seem to be most like-minded with your position. Any idea why they're not running for re-election?
I think a lot of it is one of the reasons I had such a hard time deciding to run. It's such a flashpoint in the county, and no matter what side you take, you're going to make enemies on the other side. And it's just, right now, the I don't know who all's running. I know that Rick Moffitt's running, I believe. I know that Webb Melder's running. Of the other present directors, I couldn't tell you. I don't even know what stacked up for which areas. I haven't looked into it. Because it really wasn't my concern who else was going to be on the board. My concern was just getting members on there that the only one I can actually affect is Conroe because I live in Conroe. So I wanted us to be at least represented by somebody that knew something about water, and it would, I just think you have a better chance of getting a good outcome if you've got somebody that's got experience that knows what can happen if you make the wrong decision.
Okay.
Because there's no going back.
Well, I understand that. Okay, Dennis?
You mentioned, I think, that we have some water rights to the Trinity Water.
Yes.
Lone Star has that, or?
No, SJRA reserved them through the GRP
Okay.
from the Trinity, but we presently have no way to attach them. We don't have any way to get them to Lake Conroe. That requires running a pipeline.
Yeah. So are we paying for that every year?
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason we did that is because water rights are very hard to get. And if we give them up, which the review committee voted this year to give them up, and we're hoping that the SJRA will pick them up. If they don't, we'll lose those water rights.
The SJRA owns them now?
The GRP is the one that bought
Okay.
the water rights. So the SJRA, GRP,
Yeah.
basically the conglomerations of utility districts bought the water rights.
How long have they had them, you know?
About 3 years, I think.
Really? Any idea what we paid?
I don't remember.
I mean, it's just like paying for an option, though. We don't
Yeah.
pay for usage, huh?
I want to say it's like 100,000 a year.
Okay. All right, that's good. I give it to John. John, you ready for it or not?
Yep. On the budget, the question was, what are the top 3 areas where the budget for this office needs to be adjusted? You said from a peripheral view, I'm unaware of any changes this time. I believe over $1 million has been spent in litigation. Do you feel like that's been justified
No.
by the groundwater district, or?
Well, it's justified in the sense that in order to implement the changes that need to be made, they're going to have to fight the litigation, because if you do not, if you don't enforce your rules, they're not rules. So yes, because the fight right now is over the number that they set, which may be why they changed their number. I don't know. It may not be that there's 100,000 acre feet there that could actually be used. They might have just said, okay, we'll go with you and give you a little more. But I think the litigation could have been done a whole lot more diplomatically if the two sides would have worked together to come to an agreement. I think money, in my opinion, you spend on an attorney is wasted money. I hope none of y'all are attorneys, but I think all attorney's gonna do is take your money and tell you what you want to hear. Whether he wins or loses, it's not really any skin off his nose.
Yeah.
Okay, if I've got the big picture, you painted a somewhat bleak picture for Montgomery County. Wells are dropping, aquifers being depleted, all that sort of stuff. Is Lake Conroe poised to supply all of the water needs for the growing county? Are we going to be able to divert enough pumpage to from groundwater to surface water to prevent further damage to the aquifers? And what's the solution? Do we prohibit immigration into Montgomery County?
For approximately the next 40 years, it will be able to supply our needs. After that, no. But by the same token, if we use Lake Conroe to supply our needs, the levels are gonna drop on the lake. There's gonna be more fights, look what happened over lowering the lake level 2 foot to try to prevent flooding in Kingwood and along the lower San Jacinto Channel. It's kind of back to my point why I really didn't, I had to do some serious soul suction to run for this position. If I did not think there was a need, I wouldn't be running for it, because I'm serious. I have watched these wells drop. I've seen how much money my district alone has spent on trying to keep up with it by lowering pumps and raising horsepower and stuff. I don't want to see this county lose its water supply. That's the only reason I'm running.
And I can understand that, and I fully appreciate that. And yet I listened in Commissioners Court this morning as the commissioners were talking about, we want to encourage people to come and businesses to come, and we're going to give tax abatements to businesses in Montgomery County. And if Montgomery County keeps having this type of growth, can we sustain it?
Not with the present water supply we've got.
What's the answer? Because one of the things is surface water evaporates, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, aquifers don't evaporate. Injection wells to replenish the aquifers, what?
Injection wells are being used in West Texas, out around Midland and Odessa and places like that. It has been effective, and it could be done here. Does that mean But if we do that, we have to get special permitting. We have to do further treatment to the wastewater before we can inject it. And it'll be more costly. Plus, we have to fight the nature conservatories over water that's presently running off into the Gulf that helps maintain the ecosystem, because when we take that water off, it's no longer running into the Gulf. There's nothing about this business that's not a fight.
Okay.
It's water.
It's water.
That 250 horsepower pump, is that an electric pump?
Hmm?
That 250 horsepower pump that you mentioned?
Yes, it's an electric motor.
pump?
It's a centrifugal vertical drive pump. The pump is in the hull, the motor's on top, it's shaft driven, and it picks the water up and brings it to the surface.
Is that a Grundfos? Grundfos? What type of pump?
Gould.
Okay.
That's a big pump. So what is the pumpage that you get out of those 4 wells that you have?
I get 650 gallons a minute out of one of my Evangeline wells. I get 720 gallons a minute out of the other Evangeline well. I get 1,100 gallons a minute out of one of the Jasper wells, and I get 900 gallons a minute out of the other Jasper well.
So have you had to reduce pumpage to comply with Lone Star?
No, we joined the GRP where some could overconvert, like the Woodlands and Conroe and stuff, so we could continue to produce water from the aquifer. The theory behind it is some overconvert to surface water, so others can pump their portion of the groundwater, and all play an equal share to make the picture work. In other words, we pay surface water fees to the SJRA to balance the cost of the water going to Conroe.
And Conroe is the one that's converting, the city of Conroe?
The city of Conroe is converted, the Woodlands is converted, several of the muds in South Montgomery County here have converted. Ours hasn't, because they can't effectively get a water line to us, because I guess they run out of money, and you got to put in storage tanks and mixing tanks and stuff like that. In fact, the SJRA gives the city of Conroe about $14 million to overconvert, to improve their system and add tanks and stuff of that nature.
And the city of Conroe is in litigation with Lone Star, aren't they?
And the SJRA. They're not paying the rates to the SJRA, and they're litigating with a groundwater district over having to convert to start with.
But they have converted, as you understand it.
They have converted, and we are furnished, the SJRA is furnishing them the water, the GRP is furnishing them water.
All right.
They're just not paying the rate for it.
Okay.
So, one of the questions, I guess, is under ethics there. Should two local government entities force residents to pay millions, billions of dollars for infrastructure development without a vote? You answered citizens should have a vote in how their money is spent in an ideal world. There is not presently a mechanism granted by state law to accommodate such a vote in a countywide election for water resource management, right? But isn't there one in your upcoming election? I mean, there is that vote.
Well, you have a vote on who's sitting on the Lone Star board.
Right.
So,
Do you think that's a good idea to have an election, or are you okay with the appointed positions as they
I
stood?
personally believe with the appointed positions, you had a better chance of getting people on the board that had experience with managing water, because ideally, your municipal utilities are putting people on there, or your county governments, and you would think that they would do the research to make sure that these folks knew something about what they were going to be managing. I mean, you wouldn't take a sixth grader and put him in charge of managing your bus routes, I don't think.
Montgomery County would.
Well,
You know, not necessarily the school district, but our county leaders.
Yeah, well, I must admit, there are some dysfunctional aspects of Montgomery County's government.
Quite a few. Dale?
I'll pass for the moment, I'll come back to it. Well, no, let me go ahead. Do you support the new board engaging an independent third party to conduct an audit? You said, I support ethical operations of the district. You don't feel an audit of the books would be a wise thing to do?
They audit their books once a year by state law, just like every municipality does. There's an auditor who comes in and audits the books to make sure the money is spent on what it was supposed to be spent on. In other words, by the budget.
Is that audit available to the public?
Should be, yes.
Is that an outside audit?
Yeah, they hire an outside auditor to come in.
Each year?
And do the audit every year. So do every municipality and city in the state, as far as I know. It's a TCEQ regulation.
Have you gone looking for the most recent audit just to find out the results of that audit?
I have never viewed one of their audits.
Okay. Okay, now Dennis.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at this statement that the Lone Star is not in a position to control cost of the water. I think it's generally viewed that the 30% mandate is the sole reason that the water bills have doubled.
The addition of the water plant on Lake Conroe and paying off the bonds is what caused that to go up.
But because they factor that into the water bill.
Yes.
I mean, if everybody was still pumping like they were 10 years ago or so.
Well, if they could tax like the cities and counties do, those bonds would be paid off with tax revenue on a broader scale. As it is, it's paid off through rates, which means the rate goes up because there's not a taxing authority there to spread the grief across the entire county. It just goes to the users.
Which is
Might be
pretty much
fair.
the entire county, right? I mean, the only people that are excluded would be those folks with small wells
Yeah.
that don't pay it.
And they're the ones that are at the mercy of the guys with the big pumps, because we pump the water right out from under them, and they don't have 25 to 3,000 homes to spread that cost over.
Okay,
In the other category on political parties, you say you affiliate with both the Republican and Libertarian parties.
I'm pretty much a voting Republican, but I lean Libertarian in a lot of aspects. I don't think the government needs to be telling you you got to wear a seatbelt or that you have to. I think you should give people credit for using their own common sense. If they feel like it's okay for them to sit on the porch and drink a beer, they ought to be able to sit on the porch and drink a beer. If they feel like they can drive without a seatbelt and they're safer that way, they ought to be able to do that. I don't think we need nanny government.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're kind of, sounds like you lean fiscal conservative, maybe a little bit more, not as much socially conservative. You'd indicate.
I don't even know what a social conservative would be. I've never seen a socialist that was
Pro-life.
conservative.
Pro-life,
Pro-life?
to start with, yeah.
Well, I'm pro-life.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So you said you support the majority of the Republican platform.
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain things that stand out that you disagree with, that you can recall?
Yeah, there are. I don't believe that they put enough into managing government agencies. Like, I mean, I'm sure y'all have all read of the $500 toilet seats that the Air Force bought for planes and stuff. I mean, that's mismanagement. Whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, or your Uncle Joe. There are common sense things that both parties could put into effect that would save this country a lot of money. But they're not doing that. And they've given up a lot of their rights to govern by creating agencies and throwing it in their lap. You know that the EPA is mandated to come up with a certain block of regulations on water every year. Whether they make any sense or not, they have to come up with these regulations. That's stupid. If it's not gonna hurt you, why regulate it?
Well, I think, so the question was, you know, what didn't you agree with on the Republican platform? I think everything you just stated there, Republican platform probably agrees with you on, but that's, Dale.
Okay, this is
We got,
the last one I have on my list.
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes here.
Okay, you have the actual practical experience with the USGS folks and their testing and so forth. All the differing opinions out there, there's a lot of studies that have been performed. What studies have you actually dug into? Have you tried to go into some of these studies that maybe have a differing point of view than you have and try to find out what the problem is with those studies, where they go astray?
Texas Water Development Board 365, I think, deals with productions of the Gulf Coast aquifer, and I've delved off into it some. I'm actually studying it right now. I'm not deep into it, so I haven't come up with an actual overall picture of what they're trying to get over to me. The TIERS report, I have looked at it, and I agree that there's probably that much water there and that it is recoverable, but the TIERS report does not go into the fact that taking that much water is going to cause catastrophic effects to the aquifer. It just says the water's there and you can get it. It don't tell you what you're gonna do once the water's gone, which is my problem with the TIERS report. It gives a false narrative of what is actually available to use without damaging the aquifer.
Okay.
Do you know what the budget is for Lone Star Conservation District?
No, I do not.
Well, I think it's relatively small, $2 or $3 million. And I'm wondering, how did they pay for that building? That building cost more than $2 or $3 million. And I guess the real question is, if you're on the board, and we're looking at this multi-million-dollar building, and we're looking at a lot of people that make a lot of money that doesn't really do much, what would you recommend to streamline their operation? Would you move into a rented office somewhere, or hire more people, lay off more people? How can we make that a more efficient operation?
I'm not sure why they moved out of the county building and into their own offices. I don't know what motivated them to do that. I do know part of it was that they wanted to set up some water conservation methods there for educational methods, or teaching and stuff of that nature. I know they've got porous concrete for their driveways. They've got detention pond that is designed to not only recharge the aquifer, but to be an amenity. They put a lot of thought into designing it for educational purposes.
It's dry, right, that pond in front? That pond in front is dry?
It's in behind it.
Okay.
Well, there's a pond in front of it too, but all of it intermingles to collect groundwater and recharge the aquifer. If you notice, the paving itself looks like it's spider web. The reason for that is it's porous, the water can move through it. So not as much water runs off, some of it soaks in. But it's mostly an educational function. I believe in the long run it's probably more beneficial to the county and the people out here to have a facility where they can bring school kids in and train them or teach them about water conservation and stuff of that nature.
Maybe so. Okay.
All right, well, that brings us to your closing, and up to 5 minutes if you like, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, my closing would be kind of like my opening, I guess. The things we discussed are all important. I am probably about as conservative as anybody you would run into. I don't like wasted money or wasted anything. If it can be recycled or reused, I reuse it. If you looked around my house, you'd think it was a dump probably from the stuff that people would have thrown away. But I mean, I was raised that way. My grandpa and my grandma were sharecroppers, and I was raised with a background of taking care of yourself and managing your resources to meet your needs. And I apply that in my business practices, I apply that in my daily life, and I will try and apply those same status or same thinking with the groundwater district. I want to get the most bang for our buck, but at the same token, I want to be sure that we leave our children and our grandchildren at least as well off as we are with water availability and cost. I want to control the destruction of our environment. I don't want it to happen.
Okay.
That's
Looks
all
like
I
we've
need
got
to
a
say.
couple.
Well, yeah, I got a couple of minutes, but I don't.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
then? Okay. On here, let's see, one of the questions right before other category. Do you oppose use of public funds other than for needed infrastructure to subsidize the cost of private facilities such as stadiums, arenas, hotels? You said yes, I believe public funds should be used for publicly owned infrastructure. Okay, so would that include MUDs, like to
Yes.
develop infrastructure?
That would include MUDs. I do
For
not
say,
believe a
subdivision.
government entity should take public funds and purchase property and then pass it off to a developer to develop it to increase its tax base or something like that. I don't think eminent domain should be used to take people's property, and that includes mud districts. I don't believe the city of Conroe should have been able to come out and take April Sound, and I don't believe the city of Houston should have been able to come out and take Kingwood without a vote of the people that live there.
Right.
I think if you own property, you should have a say in where your property is located. If you buy outside the city and want to live outside the city, and the city wants to come and get you, then you ought to have a vote on whether they can or not.
So on your property, ownership, land, water, heaven to the core of the earth? And how does that apply to water being managed by the groundwater district? So,
Under state law right now, the water belongs to the property owner. But by the same token, if my neighbor puts in a pump, he can pump the water out from under my property and I don't get any money out of it. In fact, the city pumps the water out from under my property and sells it to me. So I guess the water under my property is not mine. I mean,
It's yours if you go get it first.
it's yours if you get it first. You got the right of capture, I think is what they call it under Texas law.
and whoever has the bigger pump, right? Okay, well, good deal, well.
Not necessarily fair, because if you walk down Judson and Conroe, whoever's got the biggest stick usually got the most wallets too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, thank you very much for coming in, Jackie. Appreciate all your time and for running for this position, and we wish you luck.
Okay.